This is DW News live from Berlin. It is question time for Germany's Chancellor, with his party's approval ratings plummeting and amid tensions within his three-party coalition. Chancellor Olaf Scholz is about to address lawmakers in Parliament, and we'll be bringing that to you live. Also coming up on the show, Israel ends its military operation in the city of Jenin. Left behind, the ruins of 2 days of drone strikes and raids. At least 12 Palestinians were killed, and now there's new rocket fire coming from Gaza into Israel. And in Afghanistan, the Taliban orders all beauty salons to close their doors within a month. It's the latest restriction on women's rights and freedoms since the Taliban regained power. I'm Anya Coopers-McKinnon. Welcome to the programme. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is about to address lawmakers in Parliament one last time before the summer break. Now, his speech comes as his party's approval ratings are plummeting. Recent polls show that Scholz's Social Democrats are on par with the far-right AfD, or Alternative for Germany. Scholz is expected to face questions on inflation and the energy crisis, including a green heating law that has divided his ruling coalition. Now, these are live images that you're seeing from the German Parliament here in Berlin. The Chancellor is also under scrutiny at the moment over a tax evasion scandal during his time as mayor of Hamburg. And Olaf Scholz is about to start speaking.
What we have done so far in the course of this year, we have not arrived at the summer recess yet. There will be many decisions to be made in this week. But I know that many of the things that we have put on track, that will have to be turned into law, still will have to be negotiated. Thank you for that. Apart from that, our work reflects what is required to modernize our country and to make sure that in 20, 30 years we will have good jobs, that we will have to put a stop on climate change and foster green production and the production of semiconductors, for example. We have made all this possible, and this is reflected in the budget that today we have passed as a draft as a federal government and handed over to the Bundestag. There are priorities that are of an obvious nature. First of all, the safety of our country and the security of our country. The Russian war of attack has started a turning point because it is an immediate threat to the security architecture of Europe, and it has come with many consequences. For example, that we spend large amounts to help and support Ukraine in humanitarian but also in military terms. And this has to be set on a democratic track for the future, because nobody knows how long this war will last and we will be able to shoulder this task. But with a special view on the necessity to foster the German Bundeswehr, which is what we have made possible with a special budget that the Bundestag has passed with a majority and that will be implemented quickly in order to strengthen the Bundeswehr. And with a view on the future, this is also reflected in the budget, we will fund these activities with the means of our regular budget, and we are prepared for that, which is what you can also see in the budget draft that we will discuss with you. But security is a challenge, and of course it also means that this is a challenge for the rest of the budget, because these tasks are additional. Had it been in a different way, it would be easier to handle other things, but it is necessary for us to face this task and to do what we have to do for the security of our country and the equipment of Bundeswehr and the strength of the alliance and NATO. And this is what we will do. The second priority, I have just mentioned it in my introductory remark, is that we have to make sure that we will remain a successful industrial country with modern and upcoming industries. It is important for us to be carbon neutral in 2040, and this is what will happen with massively incrementing renewable energies, offshore, onshore, solar energy, the enlargement of our grids, of charging infrastructures, a hydrogen network, and for a decision in favor of new power plants that will complement the energy system, hydropower plants, gas-fired power plants, and we will make sure that investments will take place in the industry in order to produce steel in a different way or concrete in a different way and bring forward electromobility. This is what we do to a large extent, and this is also reflected in this budget. And there is something I would like to add with view on the required investments in our country. Around the world, we have understood that we have to become more resilient, and that means there are certain industries that should be located here in Europe and in Germany. And now there is a trend to bring back the semiconductor industry to Europe and especially to Germany. This is a positive development that we support. This is about the investments that we make in Saarland and Saxony-Anhalt. There are many, many semiconductor factories that will be developed in Germany, and that is good news in an era where some people are not sure how the industry of our country will develop. It does develop, and we make sure that this is the case. And the third remark that I would like to make in this context is that we make sure that there is cohesion in our society, that we do everything so that everybody can participate, feels heard and seen, that people know that it is about them too. And we have made tax reliefs possible for small and medium incomes, and we have decided that the statutory pension payments will not have to be deduced from the income, and for those who earn less than 2,000 euros a month. And we have seen social political reforms such as the citizens' benefit or the rent benefit that makes it possible to support retired people in a better way. And we will have a child benefit for the first, second and third child, and the tax-free child allowance, and in terms of mobility, the Germany ticket that is available everywhere now. So we have actively fostered cohesion and will continue to do so in the future. This is why, amongst our plans, we find the attempts to do everything to get the basic child allowance in place. The government will review the drafts as early as possible until the end of August so that the reform will enter into force in the beginning of 2025. It's an ambitious endeavor, but it is an endeavor that will contribute to more justice in our society. Security, economic prosperity, and a future-proof industry, climate neutrality and cohesion. These are the most important features of a budget that, of course, is challenged by the fact that over the past few years, many of us have gotten used to the larger dimensions that we have made possible to fight the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic consequences, but also measures taken to mitigate the consequences of the Russian war of attack on Ukraine, be it the construction of new energy pipelines or the high gas and energy prices on the international market. We have tackled all these challenges, and nobody would have thought that our country would make it through the last winter safely, but we did. But of course, now we will see a budget that does not attempt to use debt-funded means to fight crises, but now we are focusing on what our country needs, and this is what you find in our draft budget. Thank you very much. Before we will have the first question, I would like to ask everybody to stick to their allotted time. 1 minute for the first question, 1 minute for the answer, the follow-up question, 30 seconds, and 30 seconds for the answer to this second question. And the first question comes from the CDU Parliamentary Group, Dorothee Bär. Thank you very much, President. Chancellor, for us, the parental benefit is one of the important tools and achievements in family policy of the past few years. We introduced it in 2007 as a government led by the CDU, and the idea was to help well-trained, educated young women to financially be in a better situation when they decide to have a child. And now, this week, you have announced the decision to reduce it, and this actually is a blow to the middle section of our society, people who pay taxes, which is necessary to pay for all these social benefits. And this is why I would like to ask you, why do you think that it's families who will feel the cuts in the new budget, and why are they being punished?
Thank you very much for your question.
First of all, I would like to underline that the parental benefit indeed is a social and political innovation that we have kept developing in Germany, and it is supposed to make a contribution to help more fathers, more men to stay at home and to make sure that childcare is not only something that women do. When it comes to today's draft, we have an income threshold of approximately 300,000 euros, which is quite a lot. And in the previous years, we have often had to answer the questions of whether or not this threshold is correct. So I believe when calibrating this reform, we need to discuss the details. What's important is that the core idea of the parental benefit is not left behind, and this is about encouraging more people, more parents to have children, to encourage them to use the good childcare structure and to make sure that men and women alike look after the children.
Listening to the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz speaking there in the Bundestag. And to talk more about what we just heard from the Chancellor, we have got our chief political correspondent, Nina Hase, with us, who was following that speech. Nina, tell us what stood out for you the most in his speech. He obviously covered a variety of topics, but what was it that stood out most for you?
Well, of course, Anya, this is a ritual that everybody here in Parliament does look forward to when they get the opportunity to ask members of the government their most pressing questions. And today, this was a very domestic, audience-oriented speech by Olaf Scholz, because today is the day when the German government is announcing its budget, so where it's going to spend the money from next January onwards, and which priorities is it going to take. So Olaf Scholz is, of course, somebody who tries to defend his government policy plans, and he focused on 3 issues. And he said, one, we took the priority of spending a lot of money in defense. For years, Germany neglected the armed forces. There was not enough money for the Bundeswehr, and then with Ukraine's invasion, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, rather, of course, this came as a big shock for a completely underprepared, ill-equipped Bundeswehr. So this is going to have to happen. The Bundeswehr needs to be ready to defend Germany, but also so that Germany can fulfill its commitments, said Olaf Scholz in this speech. So the defense budget is actually going to go up. Not enough, argues the defense minister, but still it is the only resort that is really getting more money. In all the other areas, Germany is going to take some cuts or not invest a lot more. But Olaf Scholz said the second priority was to send a signal out to the world that Germany wants to stay a highly industrialized country and that it wants to attract workers from around the world, that investments are happening, that Germany is also becoming a semiconductor producer producer, for example, so that investment in this country is worth it, he said. And then the third big priority for him was social cohesion here in society, because, of course, Germany is going, like many other countries around the world, through an extremely challenging phase with Russia's war against Ukraine, but also still the impact of the COVID pandemic. So this is a very contentious issue, and so social cohesion does sometimes feel at risk.
All right. Now, of course, Germany's investment in its defence budget is of interest both domestically and from an international perspective. And he did focus, didn't he, on the importance of investing enough money and in Germany's continuing support of Ukraine.
He did say that, yeah, and Boris Pistorius wants more billions out of the budget, but...
Boris Pistorius, of course, being Germany's new defence minister.
Exactly. He's the defense minister. So he has said we've under-equipped the Bundeswehr for years and years. And we saw it in February last year that Germany was really not in a position to even support Ukraine with weapons, let alone make sure that the country itself is defendable by its own armed forces. So a lot of catching up to do there. So more money, more billions are going into defense. So that is, of course, something where Olaf Scholz also is looked at very, very carefully from Germany's partners around the world, so that Germany can take over this crucial position that it has at the heart of Europe, to be there for Ukraine and to also be in a position to defend itself. But, of course, this is also a topic where we're beginning to see a debate here in Germany, where some people are saying, OK, so you're investing in tanks, but are you investing enough in Germany's children? And that is potentially a very, very, very dangerous debate for the governing coalition.
OK. Now, the first 6 months of this year have not been plain sailing for the Chancellor and his coalition, have they? And he himself has faced criticism for not showing strong enough leadership, for a lack of charisma. Would you say that this address was more assertive, that he's trying to come against those claims?
Olaf Scholz is not the most charismatic person when he talks to the parliament. He can be quite charismatic when he talks to normal citizens, but usually when he stands on a stage like that, he is very much the German Chancellor who is trying to keep this coalition together, which he says is working quite well. We mustn't forget that this is a coalition that consists of 3 different parties, so that is a first in Germany's history. Of course, they have different priorities, and he has to keep them all together. He says, we're investing and we're managing to tackle all these different challenges. We're coping with the crisis quite well, but there is a lot of infighting. There's a lot of squabbling going on between the different parties. They're accusing each other of not investing enough. So, and that doesn't go down well with German voters, which is why we've seen in recent polls that his party, in particular Olaf Scholz's, has gone down, and the far-right AfD party is on the rise.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, but DW's chief political correspondent, Nina Hauser, thank you so much for your analysis. OK, let's take a look now at some of the other stories making news around the world. And a powerful storm has killed at least 1 person in the Netherlands. Authorities are urging people in most parts of the country to stay indoors. Heavy rain and powerful gusts of wind have disrupted hundreds of flights at Amsterdam's international airport and shut down some railway services and highways. Chinese authorities say torrential rain has killed 15 people in the southwest of the country. The downpours triggered floods in central and southern provinces, with more than 400,000 people affected in Sichuan alone. This comes in the